Florida home prices do not collapse in one dramatic moment. They unravel. It starts with a house that does not get any offers the first weekend, then a price cut, then another. Then you hear a friend say their realtor told them to be realistic because buyers have options again. Little by little, the market that felt untouchable a few years ago starts to feel very human. For a long time, Florida was sold as a simple equation. Sunshine plus migration plus no state income tax equals guaranteed appreciation. Retirees, remote workers, and investors all believed some version of that story. You could buy in almost any zip code, sit still, and watch your equity grow while the world came to you. But housing is not a slogan. It is math, insurance, taxes, mortgage rates, wages, commutes, and risk. When those pieces shift, the story changes. Right now, across the Sunshine State, there are cities where that change is already visible from the street. More listings, more incentives, more owners who quietly admit that if they sold today, they would walk away with much less than they expected. This is Discover the Nation. If you want countdowns that show you where the cracks are forming before they turn into headlines, make sure you subscribe right now. Hit subscribe, turn on alerts, and stay with me through the entire list, because the city at number 1 is the one where the gap between image and reality may be the most painful of all. Let us start the countdown. Number 10. Daytona Beach. Daytona Beach has always lived on a line between everyday life and permanent vacation. You have the speedway, the spring break crowds, condo towers facing the Atlantic, and just a few blocks away, working-class neighborhoods that keep the city running when the tourists go home. During the boom, that mix turned into fuel. Investors snapped up condos as short-term rentals. Snowbirds bought second homes, confident that someone would always pay good money to stay steps from the sand. Local buyers stretched for houses farther inland, thinking that as long as they were in the Daytona orbit, they were on the right side of the trend. Prices rose faster than paychecks, and nobody wanted to miss the last train. Buildings that once catered to long-term residents shifted toward vacation income, pushing regular renters and first-time buyers away from the water. Now the bill for that rush is coming due. Insurance costs on coastal buildings have climbed, sometimes drastically. Condo associations are dealing with stricter maintenance and reserve requirements, which flow straight into monthly dues. Owners who never thought about concrete reports or seawall repairs are suddenly staring at 5-figure obligations. Tourists are still coming, but they are more careful, and some owners are learning that their peak season income no longer covers peak season expenses. On the inland streets, you can see the slowdown in a quieter way. More for sale signs sitting past the first weekend, more listings advertising price reductions, rate buydowns, and credits for repairs to keep buyers interested. Agents talk about showings without offers, and local buyers who used to dream about a beach life are instead running the numbers on risk and long-term costs. Daytona Beach is not empty. The sand is still there, the races still roar, and the sunsets still look great on a phone screen. But the idea that anything with that address would always climb in value has already started to fall apart, and that realization is spreading from the shoreline into neighborhoods that thought they were inland enough to be safe. Number 9. West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach was long marketed as the practical side of paradise. Across the water from the ultra-wealthy island of Palm Beach, it gave buyers a way to live near glittering yachts and designer boutiques while paying something closer to a normal city price. For years, you could buy a condo or a modest house, walk to Clematis Street or the waterfront, and feel like you were getting a front-row seat at a luxury show for a second-row ticket. Then, the new migration wave hit. Remote workers, finance professionals, and retirees from the Northeast discovered West Palm Beach listings, compared them to Manhattan or Boston prices, and saw a steal. New towers rose downtown. Brightline trains turned Miami and Fort Lauderdale into quick trips instead of long drives. Investors grabbed units for seasonal rentals and corporate housing. Single-family homes in older neighborhoods were flipped quickly, and values jumped as buyers told themselves they were getting in before the next boom. Now the stress is showing in the monthly bills. Insurance premiums have climbed sharply, especially for older buildings and homes near the water or in flood-prone zones. Condo associations are dealing with stricter reserve requirements and costly repairs, and that flows straight into maintenance fees and special assessments. Property taxes reflect years of rising values. Some owners who once celebrated their location are now discovering that the cost of staying there grows faster every year, even when their income does not. You can see the shift in the market's tempo. Downtown condos that would have attracted multiple offers now sit through several weekends, while buyers study association documents and ask hard questions about future assessments. Inland houses that once sold instantly after a light renovation are now facing price cuts and seller credits. Buyers are comparing West Palm Beach not just to other South Florida cities, but to entirely different metros and even out-of-state options. And some decide the risk-reward trade no longer feels as automatic as it did during the frenzy. The waterfront views and palm-lined streets have not gone anywhere, but the confidence that any property on this side of the Intracoastal was a guaranteed win is clearly faded. Number 8. Cape Coral. Cape Coral was built on the promise of water and sunshine, miles of canals, boat lifts and backyards, palm trees framing cul-de-sacs, and a pitch that you could live the Florida boating life without paying Miami or Naples money. For years, that story pulled in retirees, snowbirds, and remote workers who wanted a house, a dock, and a fresh start. During the boom, that promise turned into a feeding frenzy. Out-of-state buyers flew in and wrote offers after quick tours. Investors scooped up new construction as short-term rentals, betting northern money would always be there to fill vacancies. Builders raced to pour slabs and lift roofs, pushing prices higher. Listing photos of sparkling pools and canal views made it feel like the only direction was up. Then the reality of coastal risk and carrying costs came crashing in. Major storms did not just damage homes, they reshaped insurance markets and rebuild budgets. Premiums jumped, especially for properties near the water or with older roofs. Taxes followed values higher. Some owners who thought they had scored a bargain Florida paradise found themselves staring at annual bills that rose faster than their income, especially if they were relying on fixed retirement checks or unstable rental income. You can see the shift now in how houses move, or do not move. Canal homes that once sparked competition sit through multiple weekends. Price cuts and seller credits show up on listings that would have been bid up years ago. Some investors are exiting after realizing that vacancies and higher insurance have erased their profit. Local buyers who used to dream of trading up to the water are doing another calculation, asking whether the dock is worth the risk. Cape Coral is not empty. The canals glow at sunset. But beneath that postcard surface, the belief that any house with a slice of water will automatically climb in value is starting to break. For a city built on the idea that lifestyle would always outrun the math, that slow turn in confidence is what home prices falling apart looks like from the inside. Number 7. Lakeland. Lakeland always occupied a strategic spot on the Florida map. Roughly between Tampa and Orlando, dotted with lakes, home to distribution centers and colleges, it offered a familiar sales pitch. Live in the center, drive either way for opportunity, and pay less than you would in the big city. In the last cycle, that pitch turned into a stampede. Logistics and warehouse jobs expanded, corporate relocations brought buzz, and both investors and families decided Lakeland was the smart play. New subdivisions pushed outward, and prices climbed at a pace that no longer felt like a quiet middle ground. Some buyers stretched into homes that assumed not only steady work, but steady raises. Builders and agents described it as a value play, even while list prices crept closer to those in the metros Lakeland was supposed to undercut. Then the stress factors stepped up. Mortgage rates removed the cheap money that had made those higher prices feel comfortable. Property taxes chased those valuations upward. Insurance, even inland, became more expensive as insurers reassessed risk across the state. Meanwhile, some residents learned that the daily commute in either direction was not just a short hop, but a real drag when fuel prices rose and traffic thickened. What sounded like a simple drive on a map turned into an hour out of every morning and every evening. Today, Lakeland is a prime example of a city where the story sounds great and the spreadsheet looks tighter every month. Listings that expect yesterday's prices can sit uncomfortably long. Builders compete with existing homes using closing cost help and temporary rate reductions that individual sellers cannot match. Rental owners who thought they could raise rents forever are suddenly offering free months to keep units full. Buyers who once treated Lakeland as the automatic compromise now hesitate, comparing it to smaller towns with lower costs or simply staying put. That hesitation is what pulls prices down. It does not take a crash chart to feel like things are coming apart. All it takes is enough families realizing that the deal they were promised no longer quite adds up and saying no with their feet.
Number 6. Ocala. Ocala built its brand on open land and open sky, horse farms, rolling pastures, and a quieter pace than the coastal counties. For years, it attracted retirees, equestrian money, and families who wanted space without South Florida intensity. It was the place where people said they were buying lifestyle first and price charts second. In the recent boom, Ocala added another layer. It became the place where out-of-state buyers went when they could not believe how much house and land they could get for the price. Remote workers bought brand new construction in large master-planned communities. Investors picked up rentals for workers in healthcare, logistics, and service jobs. Values leaped forward in neighborhoods that had been steady for a long time, and once sleepy streets filled with moving trucks and new area codes. But Ocala's economic base is still more modest than those price charts suggest. Wages in many industries remain lower than in major metros. As interest rates rose and basic costs increased, stretched buyers started to feel vulnerable. Insurance costs, especially for newer subdivisions near wooded areas, inched up. Property taxes climbed. Some investors learned that turnover, repairs, and vacancy eat into returns faster than they expected, especially when tenants can still find cheaper options elsewhere in Marion County. Now, in many Ocala communities, you can see a clear divide. Attractive homes that are realistically priced still move, but anything chasing peak-era numbers lingers. Buyers are picky about build quality, school zones, and distance to daily needs. They are not impressed just because a house is new or has granite counters. Longtime locals are comparing the new price tags to what they know about local paychecks and shaking their heads. When that shift in power happens, the inflated portion of prices starts to drain away. Ocala is not collapsing, but it is being repriced, one cautious buyer and one reluctant seller at a time. And for owners who built their plans around constant appreciation, that repricing feels like the ground itself is moving under their feet.
Number 5. Kissimmee. Kissimmee has always been Orlando's shadow city. Close to theme parks, packed with vacation homes, hotels, and service workers, it lives on the border between tourism fantasy and working-class reality. For years, that made it one of the most popular places to buy a rental or a starter home in Central Florida. Hospitality workers and restaurant staff shared the same roads as families on once-in-a-lifetime trips, and that flow of visitors made any property feel like an opportunity. The recent surge intensified everything. Investors bought townhomes to flip into short-term rentals. Families bought in resort-style communities thinking they could balance living and hosting. Out-of-state buyers grabbed properties they planned to visit a few times a year while renting them out the rest of the time. Prices rose quickly in communities wrapped in pools, clubhouses, security gates, and shuttle buses to the parks. Listing descriptions talked more about projected income than everyday life. Then conditions changed. Some communities tightened rules on short-term rentals. Operating costs jumped from cleaning crews to utilities to repairs. Insurance premiums on large shared structures increased. Associations raised dues to cover pools, elevators, and new reserve requirements, and those fees flowed into monthly budgets. Tourists are still coming, but they are more cost-conscious, spreading their trips out instead of splurging. The math behind many vacation investment dreams no longer looks as magical as it did before.
You can see the stress in Kissimmee resale listings that advertise income potential while quietly lowering their asking price month after month. Townhomes and small houses that once looked like tickets to effortless cash flow now require skeptical buyers who ask for booking histories instead of promises. Sellers admit revenue does not cover the mortgage, the dues, and the insurance. For full-time residents, the squeeze comes from sharing a market with properties that were never meant to be primary homes. When that speculative layer starts to peel away, prices do not just soften. In parts of Kissimmee, they are sliding back toward what local incomes and demand can support. Number 4. Bradenton. Bradenton sits in the shadow of more famous names. Sarasota to the south, Tampa to the north, barrier islands lined with vacation rentals just offshore. For a long time, that position worked to its advantage. You could still reach beaches, jobs, and amenities while paying less than near the wealthiest zip codes. Riverfront views and golf course neighborhoods gave buyers a taste of the coastal lifestyle without the sticker shock. When the migration wave hit, Bradenton became a prime target for people chasing that balance. Retirees, second home buyers, and remote workers bought into manicured communities and older neighborhoods. Investors picked up multifamily buildings and single-family homes, betting on rent and appreciation. Values leaped forward as buyers compared Bradenton listings to far higher prices in Miami, Naples, or out-of-state coastal cities and rushed in. Builders launched new phases in master-planned communities, while older houses that once sat quietly on local flyers suddenly saw bidding wars. Now the hidden costs are catching up. Insurance across the region has risen sharply, even away from direct beachfront. New flood maps and storm histories weigh heavily on lenders and buyers. Property taxes have climbed along with valuations. Condominium boards and homeowners associations face more scrutiny over reserves and maintenance, which translates into higher monthly dues. Some homeowners are discovering that the total annual cost of staying in their Bradenton house is far higher than they imagined. In the current market, that strain shows up as friction. Houses closer to the water can take longer to sell unless they are aggressively priced. Inland subdivisions, especially where many homes look similar and were built in the same few years, have turned into arenas for price competition. Sellers who cling to peak numbers watch their neighbors cut to chase the remaining demand. Buyers who once felt grateful for any chance to get in are now comparing Bradenton to inland Florida cities and states, and some decide the risk is too high. Bit by bit, the inflated portion of Bradenton's pricing is being shaved away, and for those who arrived late to the party, it feels like the floor is moving under their feet. Number 3. Pensacola. Pensacola is one of Florida's oldest stories and one of its newest boomtowns at the same time. A military anchor, a busy port, historic neighborhoods, and white sand beaches made it attractive long before remote work and social media. Generations of service members cycled through the bases here, many choosing to retire nearby, giving the area a reputation for stability. In the last surge, Pensacola added a new crowd. Remote professionals and investors from farther north saw prices here as a discount compared to other Gulf Coast cities. New construction popped up in suburbs and along major corridors. Older homes were renovated to catch visiting families. Short-term rentals multiplied and prices responded, especially in areas with walkability or water access. Streets that once held simple bungalows suddenly carried listings written like boutique vacation ads. Insurance costs along the Panhandle have climbed with every storm season. Military and defense-related budgets are always subject to national politics, adding uncertainty for local incomes. Tourism is steady but sensitive to broader economic moods. When money feels tight, people cut back on trips, choose shorter stays, or hunt for cheaper rentals. Investors who bought at optimistic numbers are learning that a few empty months can erase the profit from a season. On the ground, that cocktail looks like a market with less margin for error. Overpriced homes sit, and sellers who need to move react with cuts or concessions. Buyers have more choices and are willing to walk away if a house feels risky for its flood zone. Local families who stayed on the sidelines during the frenzy now watch as some of the froth drains out. Pensacola is not empty, and it is not fading.
The bases are still active, downtown hums, and the beaches fill on sunny weekends. But in several neighborhoods, price tags are being negotiated back down to earth. And for recent buyers who thought they had locked in unbeatable deals, that adjustment feels like home values slipping away from the story they were sold. Number 2. Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale once wore the label of spring break capital, then spent years rewriting itself as a polished, upscale neighbor to Miami. New towers rose along the water, luxury homes lined the canals, yachts replaced beer coolers as the dominant symbol. Investors and high-income professionals bought in, convinced that this was the grown-up coastal play that would always stay in demand, a place where wealth could sit in a condo or a waterfront estate and quietly grow. That makeover succeeded, but it came with the same underlying risks as every other South Florida city, and those risks have moved from fine print into bold text. Insurance on waterfront and near waterfront homes has surged. Some carriers have left the market. Flooding events in king tides have forced more serious questions about long-term sustainability. Condo buildings face stricter inspection and reserve requirements, and those assessments do not care how glamorous the lobby looks. Property taxes reflect years of price gains. Even for wealthy owners, those ongoing costs are not insignificant when they land in the same year as market volatility and business uncertainty. At the same time, global and domestic buyers have become choosier. Some are diversifying into other states and even other countries. Others are demanding steeper discounts to take on what they now see as higher-risk coastal property. High-end condos and single-family homes that would once have triggered bidding wars now linger, collect a round of showings, then trim their asking numbers to get attention. In certain buildings, sellers quietly offer to cover association fees for months just to close a deal, a sign that the easy phase of the cycle is over. For mid-tier buyers and long-time locals, the squeeze is even sharper. Wages in many sectors have not kept up with appreciation and rising expenses. Service workers, office staff, and younger professionals look at the combined bill for mortgage, insurance, taxes, and association dues and realize they are priced out of the very city they keep running. The result is a market where the glamour is still visible from the water, but the balance sheet is under stress. Fort Lauderdale home prices are not collapsing all at once, but they are losing the effortless upward push they enjoyed for years, and that loss of inevitability is the real break in the story. Number 1. Naples. Naples has long been the crown jewel of luxury on the Gulf Coast. Gated communities, golf courses, designer streets, and bayfront neighborhoods signaled status. For years, buying in Naples was seen as the final step up the ladder, the place where wealth parked itself in real estate and expected to be rewarded. During the most recent run-up, those expectations went into overdrive. Demand from wealthy retirees and business owners collided with limited prime land. Prices for many properties leaped into ranges that seemed almost disconnected from local reality. New custom homes traded at numbers that assumed prosperity would keep rising, and buyers would keep paying more for the same view. Even modest condos near desirable amenities were priced as if the world's affluent would always line up for them. Now, Naples is facing the downside of its own success. Insurance and maintenance costs on large, high-end properties have soared. Coastal storm risk is impossible to ignore, and rebuilding anything here is staggeringly expensive. Condo associations are under pressure to fund reserves, and special assessments can land like a thunderclap. Property taxes reflect years of relentless appreciation. Market swings have also made some owners less eager to tie up more capital in houses they do not use year-round. You can see the tension in the listings. Grand homes that would have sold the moment they hit the market in earlier years now wait for that one buyer who still believes the old story. Price cuts at the very top create new reference points for appraisers in future negotiations. Luxury condos with once unthinkable asking prices now quietly advertise seller credits and flexible closing terms. Even small adjustments in the highest tier send a message through the regional market, because Naples has been the benchmark for years. Naples is not empty. The restaurants are busy, the golf courses are green, and the sunsets are stunning from every balcony. But the belief that these homes could climb forever without pause is already cracked. Service workers and younger professionals are pushed farther away, reminding everyone how dependent this lifestyle is on people who cannot afford to live in the core. When the flagship market for wealth and estate begins to question its own price tags in public, that is what home prices falling apart looks like in slow motion, if the streets still sparkle.
These 10 cities are not abandoned shells. People still live, work, retire, and raise families in each one. But together, they reveal the real Florida story behind the glossy brochures. River towns that thought they were the safe middle, bedroom communities that stretched too far, resort zones that leaned too hard on visitors, luxury enclaves that forgot even the rich have limits. Florida will continue to attract people. The sunshine is not going anywhere. But the era when you could buy anything with a palm tree out front and assume the market would do all the work is over. From Daytona Beach to Naples, home prices are being forced to reconnect with incomes, risk, and reality. If this breakdown helped you see through the noise, do one more thing before you go. Discover the nation. Tell us in the comments which Florida city you were watching most closely, and share this video with anyone still convinced that Florida real estate only moves in one direction. Because in these cities, home prices are already coming apart. The real question is who adapts, who gets stuck, and who recognizes the next fault line before it opens under their feet.